You can really rely on his instincts. He's wonderful, and he makes the atmosphere.
Everyone knew Robin Williams as the man who could make the whole world laugh. His energy, his voices, his unstoppable wit. He was a force unlike any other. But Sally Field saw something more. When they worked together on Mrs. Doubtfire, she witnessed a side of Robin that few people ever knew. It wasn't just about jokes or performances. It was about the man behind the laughter, the friend who carried a quiet compassion. What she experienced stayed with her for the rest of her life, and it changed the way she remembered him forever. Their story began in 1993, on the set of a film that would become one of the most beloved family comedies of all time. Mrs. Doubtfire, directed by Chris Columbus, told the story of a father so desperate to stay close to his children after divorce that he disguised himself as a Scottish nanny. Robin Williams played Daniel Hillard, the man behind the mask, while Sally Field stepped into the role of Miranda, the ex-wife trying to protect her kids. It could have been just another pairing of two Hollywood stars, but the moment they stood across from one another, something different happened. The energy shifted. This wasn't just a performance. It was the start of a connection rooted in respect and honesty. Working with Robin was unlike working with anyone else. He had a routine that only he could pull off. For the first few takes, he stuck strictly to the script, sharp, focused, professional. But once he had delivered the version everyone expected, he let loose. Suddenly the scene was alive with new voices, surprise gestures, and lines no one had written. The set would crackle with electricity, and laughter would fill the air. For many actors, this unpredictability would have been overwhelming. But Sally didn't fight it. She leaned into it, reacting in real time, letting her character's emotions grow naturally. Their scenes became a dance, Robin throwing sparks, Sally grounding them with quiet truth. Director Chris Columbus quickly realized that one camera wasn't enough to capture Robin's magic. He set up multiple cameras just to keep up, knowing that no two takes would ever be the same. Behind all the improvisation, Sally saw Robin's true dedication. He wasn't doing it to steal the spotlight. He wasn't trying to show off. His goal was always the same: to make the story feel real, to make the comedy matter. That sincerity struck Sally deeply. While they played a divorced couple on screen, off-camera they built something very different: mutual respect. Robin admired her calm strength, her ability to stay grounded no matter how wild the scene became. She admired his courage to take risks, to follow his imagination wherever it led. Together, they found balance. She kept him tethered, he lifted her higher. And in that balance, something rare was created, a chemistry that touched audiences, far beyond the film. But Sally noticed something else too. Beneath the whirlwind of characters and jokes, Robin carried a quiet sensitivity. It wasn't something he showed to the cameras, but it was always there. Years later, she would reveal the moment that proved just how deeply he cared. It happened on set, during one of the most difficult days of her life. Sally had just received the news that her father had died. He had been in a nursing home for years, and though she tried to remain composed, the loss hit her hard. She walked onto set determined to stay professional, sitting in the camper near the mock courtroom where they were filming. She didn't cry. She didn't break down. She was an Oscar-winning actress who knew how to push through. But Robin saw right through her. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the grief in her eyes. Quietly, without making a scene, he walked over, pulled her aside, and asked, "Are you okay?" When she told him the truth, "My father just died," Robin didn't hesitate. "Then you shouldn't be here," he said gently but firmly. In that moment, he forgot about schedules, scripts, and the demands of being the lead actor. He went straight to director Chris Columbus and asked for the shoot to be rearranged. "Let's film around Sally today," he insisted. And they did. The crew worked without her, shifting the schedule so she could step away and be with her family. It wasn't just professional courtesy. It was Robin looking out for someone who was hurting. He stayed close by until she left, making sure she had the space she needed. For Sally, that moment revealed the truest version of Robin Williams. The world saw the genius, the comedian who could transform any room. But she saw the friend who noticed her pain before anyone else did. The man who didn't announce his kindness but lived it quietly, instinctively. Years later, she still remembers sitting in that camper, numb with grief, and Robin stepping in, not with a joke, not with a performance, but with compassion. That was the side of him most people never saw. Looking back, Sally says Robin was sensitive and intuitive, someone who could read a room and understand what people needed. For her, that day defined him. He wasn't just the actor who made the world laugh. He was the friend who chose kindness when it mattered most. The world remembers Robin Williams for his unforgettable energy, his improvisation, his brilliance on screen. But for Sally Field, his legacy is more personal. She remembers the man who stopped everything to make sure she was okay. The man who proved that the greatest thing about him wasn't just the laughter, it was the heart behind it. And perhaps that's the truth we should all carry. Robin Williams made the world smile, but it was his compassion that left the deepest mark. Everyone knew Robin Williams as the man who could make anyone laugh. His voices, his energy, his lightning-fast jokes. He was a whirlwind of comedy. But Sally Field saw something different. When they worked together on Mrs. Doubtfire, she discovered a side of him few people ever witnessed. It wasn't just about being funny. It was about kindness, sensitivity, and the way he cared for the people around him. Their paths crossed in 1993 on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire. The film told the story of a father, desperate to stay close to his children, disguising himself as an elderly nanny. Robin played Daniel Hillard, while Sally stepped into the role of Miranda, his ex-wife. From the moment they shared the set, there was a spark. Not romantic, not dramatic, but a genuine human connection. Robin's style was unlike anything Sally had experienced. He would perform a few takes exactly as written, then suddenly break free. One moment he was Daniel Hillard. The next he was a Scottish grandmother, a cartoon voice, or something no one had ever imagined. The set would erupt in laughter, and the air would come alive. For many actors, this unpredictability might have been overwhelming. But Sally didn't fight it. She embraced it. She responded in real time, allowing her character to react naturally. The result was chemistry, a dance between Robin's wild creativity and Sally's steady truth. Together, they made the story feel alive, honest, and unforgettable. Even director Chris Columbus had to adapt. He realized one camera could never capture Robin's brilliance, so he used multiple angles at once. Every take became unique, every scene a new discovery. And through it all, Sally watched Robin with growing admiration. What impressed Sally most wasn't just his comedy, it was his dedication. Robin wasn't improvising to steal attention. He wanted the story to feel real, to connect with people. Sally respected that, and Robin, in turn, admired her calm strength. Their bond wasn't loud or flashy. It was built quietly, on trust and mutual respect. But there was another side of Robin that wasn't visible to the world. Behind the jokes, behind the characters, he carried a sensitivity few people noticed. Sally would come to see this most clearly on a day that changed everything for her. In the middle of filming, Sally received devastating news. Her father had died. She tried to hold it together, determined to keep working. She sat in her camper, near the courtroom set, hiding her grief. She didn't cry, she didn't break, but Robin noticed. He quietly pulled her aside and asked, "Are you okay?" When she whispered the truth, Robin didn't hesitate. "You shouldn't be here," he said gently. Robin immediately went to director Chris Columbus. Using his influence as both star and co-producer, he urged, "Let's shoot around Sally today." And that's what they did. The crew rearranged everything so Sally could leave and grieve. Robin stayed close until she was ready to go, making sure she wasn't alone. Looking back, Sally calls that moment unforgettable. The world knew Robin as the genius of comedy, but she knew him as the man who cared deeply. He didn't just read scripts, he read people. And when someone needed him, he acted with quiet compassion. For Sally, that's the Robin Williams who will always live on. The laughter was extraordinary, but it was his heart that left the deepest mark. Robin Williams was the man who could make the entire world laugh. He wasn't just a comedian, he was a phenomenon. His rapid-fire wit, his endless characters, his ability to turn silence into an eruption of laughter. He was larger than life. To audiences, he was unstoppable energy, the funny man who carried light into every room. But that was only part of who he was. Beneath the chaos and the comedy lived a man of deep sensitivity, one who felt more than he ever showed. For Sally Field, who worked closely with him, this hidden side became unforgettable. Years later, when she spoke about him, it wasn't his punchlines she remembered most. It was his compassion. Their story began not on a stage or at a Hollywood party, but on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. Directed by Chris Columbus, the film told the heartfelt story of Daniel Hillard, a father, desperate to stay in his children's lives after divorce, who disguised himself as an elderly Scottish nanny. Robin played Daniel, slipping seamlessly into the dual role, while Sally Field portrayed Miranda, his ex-wife, trying to protect her children while building a new life. Their first moments on set weren't just about two actors rehearsing lines. From the beginning, there was an undeniable spark between them, a sense that this partnership was about more than making a film. It was about telling a story that mattered, and perhaps about creating a bond that would linger far beyond the cameras. Robin Williams was famous for his unpredictability. On Doubtfire, that reputation came alive. He would start with discipline, delivering the scripted lines exactly as written. He respected the words, the structure, and the director's vision. But once those first takes were complete, something shifted. Robin would let his imagination run wild. Suddenly, a simple line turned into a chorus of voices. A small movement became an explosion of physical comedy. Scenes that could have been ordinary became extraordinary. For many actors, working opposite. This whirlwind could be intimidating, even exhausting. But Sally didn't see it that way. She didn't try to control it or compete with it. She embraced it, meeting Robin's fire with her own quiet strength. Sally Field had built her career on authenticity. She wasn't just reciting lines, she was living them. That grounded approach became the perfect counterbalance to Robin's fireworks. While he spun in 100 directions, she stayed rooted, giving their scenes weight and truth. Instead of being thrown off by his improvisations, she leaned into them. Her reactions weren't rehearsed, but real. That dynamic created something magical. Two styles colliding, yet blending seamlessly. For the audience, it looked like raw chemistry, but for Sally, it was the product of trust. She trusted Robin to lead her somewhere new, and he trusted her to keep the scene anchored. It was a dance, and neither partner stepped on the other's toes. Even behind the camera, Robin's energy changed everything. Director Chris Columbus quickly realized one camera would never be enough to capture Robin's brilliance. He began setting up multiple cameras at once, knowing that each take would bring something entirely new. No two performances were the same. Sally watched as the crew scrambled to keep up, yet what struck her most was Robin's purpose. He wasn't improvising to show off or steal attention. He was improvising because he wanted the film to breathe. He wanted it to feel alive. That dedication made her respect him even more. What began as two actors sharing scenes quickly became something deeper. Robin admired Sally's calmness, her ability to stay steady no matter what storm he brought into a scene. Sally admired Robin's courage to leap into the unknown without fear. Their bond wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was built on quiet respect. They weren't just making a movie together. They were creating a memory, building a friendship rooted in mutual admiration. And though they were playing a divorced couple, on screen, off screen, their connection carried warmth and sincerity. The world saw Robin Williams as larger than life. But Sally noticed something else. Behind the constant stream of jokes, behind the larger-than-life energy, was a man of surprising sensitivity. He paid attention, he noticed the small things, and he cared. To Sally, that side of him was as powerful as his comedy, perhaps even more so. It was something quiet, something hidden, but it revealed itself in the moments that mattered most. That quiet sensitivity revealed itself in full on one of the hardest days of Sally's life. While filming Mrs. Doubtfire, she received devastating news. Her father had died. He had been in a nursing home for years after suffering a stroke, but his passing still struck her deeply. Determined to remain professional, Sally walked on to set, hiding her grief. She sat in her camper near the mock courtroom, trying to focus on the work ahead. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She simply forced herself to keep going. But Robin noticed. Robin could sense what others missed. He saw the tension in her body, the heaviness in her eyes. Quietly, he walked over and pulled her aside. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Sally whispered the truth. "My father just died." Without hesitation, Robin responded, "Then you shouldn't be here." His words were firm but filled with compassion. At that moment, he wasn't the comedian, the star, or the co-producer. He was simply a friend. Robin immediately went to director Chris Columbus. Using his influence as the lead actor, he asked that the day's schedule be changed. "Let's shoot around Sally," he insisted. And so they did. Scenes without her were filmed, while she stepped away to grieve and make funeral arrangements with her family. Sally later recalled quietly, "They shot around me the rest of the day." It wasn't just professional courtesy. It was Robin making sure she had space to breathe, to process, to mourn. For Sally, that day is etched in memory. She remembers sitting in her camper, numb, wondering how she would continue. And then Robin appeared, not with jokes, not with wild characters, but with quiet strength. He didn't announce his kindness. He didn't make a spectacle of it. He simply knew what to do. In the middle of her storm, he gave her shelter. That moment revealed who he truly was. Years later, when Sally spoke about Robin, it wasn't the laughter that came to her mind first. It was that day, the moment when he saw her pain and stepped in to protect her. She described him as sensitive and intuitive, someone who noticed what others ignored. For her, that compassion defined him more than any performance ever could. The world will always remember Robin Williams as a genius of comedy, a man who could turn any silence into joy. But those who knew him more closely remember something else. They remember the quiet moments, the compassion, the way he could read a room and respond with exactly what was needed. To Sally Field, that was his greatest gift. Not the characters, not the jokes, but the kindness. Robin Williams left behind a legacy of unforgettable performances, boundless laughter, and cultural impact. But for Sally Field, his legacy is personal. She remembers not the man on stage, but the man who stopped everything to care for her when she needed it most. That's the Robin she carries with her, the friend who chose compassion over everything else. And perhaps that is the truth about Robin Williams. The world remembers the laughter, but it was his heart that left the deepest mark. After Mrs. Doubtfire wrapped, Robin and Sally went their separate ways professionally, but their connection remained intact. Hollywood often creates fleeting friendships, bonds that fade when the cameras stop rolling. But theirs was different. Every time they crossed paths, there was warmth, recognition, and an unspoken memory of what they had shared. For Sally, Robin wasn't just a co-star she once worked with. He had become a person forever woven into her story. The world continued to see Robin Williams as a force of joy, but behind closed doors, he was battling demons that few could imagine. Struggles with addiction, depression, and eventually illness weighed heavily on him. For those who truly knew him, like Sally, it wasn't surprising. They had always seen the sensitive soul behind the entertainer. What hurt most was knowing that the very gift he gave to others, laughter, was something he often couldn't find for himself. Whenever Sally spoke about Robin in later years, her words carried both love and sadness. She remembered his playfulness on set, the way he could improvise until everyone was in tears of laughter. But more than that, she remembered his kindness, the small gestures no one else saw. That day on the Doubtfire set when he protected her remains the memory she clings to. In her own words, it revealed the depth of his character. To Sally, Robin wasn't just a colleague. He was a friend who mattered. When news broke in August 2014 that Robin Williams had died, the world stood still. Fans everywhere mourned, struggling to comprehend how someone who had given so much joy could be gone. For Sally, the loss was deeply personal. She didn't just lose a fellow actor, she lost a friend who had once carried her through one of the darkest days of her life. The pain of his absence reminded her of the fragility of life, of how even the brightest souls can be consumed by their own shadows. Years have passed, but Robin's presence lingers. His films continue to touch new generations, his comedy continues to inspire, and his kindness lives on in the stories shared by those who knew him best. For Sally Field, his impact isn't just cinematic, it's personal. She carries with her the memory of a man who looked past the spotlight, who noticed when someone was hurting, and who acted not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. That is the Robin Williams she will never forget. In Hollywood, it's easy to remember people for the roles they played or the headlines they made, but Sally Field's memories of Robin Williams go beyond all that. She remembers the laughter, yes, but she also remembers the silence. The moments when Robin wasn't performing, when he wasn't trying to be funny, but when he was simply being human. Those moments, perhaps more than any film or award, define his true legacy. For Sally, Robin wasn't just the man who made the world laugh. He was the man who made her feel seen, supported, and cared for when she needed it most. Robin was adored by millions, but fame came with a burden that only those closest to him understood. Every time he stepped into the public eye, he was expected to perform, to be the funny man who lifted spirits. Few realized how exhausting that could be. Sally Field, having experienced the pressures of Hollywood herself, understood the toll it took. She often reflected on how Robin carried this weight with grace, but beneath the surface, it was clear. Being Robin Williams wasn't always easy. Off camera, Robin and Sally shared quiet conversations that revealed more than any script ever could. He spoke about fatherhood, about the joy and fear that came with raising children. She spoke about her own challenges, balancing career and family. These weren't glamorous Hollywood exchanges. They were real, raw, and deeply human. It was in these private moments that Sally discovered the true Robin, vulnerable, honest, and profoundly empathetic. One of Robin's greatest gifts, Sally believed, was his ability to be fully present. When you spoke with him, he looked at you, as though no one else existed. He wasn't distracted, he wasn't thinking about the next joke. He was with you in that moment. For Sally, that kind of presence was rare in Hollywood, where so many lived in constant motion. It made their bond special, and it left an impression she carried long after the cameras stopped rolling. But presence did not always equal peace. Robin was a master at wearing the mask of laughter. He could hide his pain behind a wall of humor, and most of the world never saw past it. Sally, however, could sense it. She knew that the man who made others laugh the hardest often cried the most when no one was watching. It was this duality, the entertainer versus the man, that made Robin so complex, so brilliant, and so heartbreakingly human. Their relationship was never about constant phone calls or flashy appearances. It was quieter than that. It was built on an unspoken understanding, a respect that didn't need constant reaffirmation. Sally once described Robin as someone who could step into a room and immediately make her feel at ease. That was their bond, one that didn't demand attention but simply existed, steady and true. Sally often said that Robin's compassion wasn't something he turned on and off, it was who he was. Whether it was a crew member having a bad day or a child visiting the set, Robin always noticed, always cared, always. To Sally, this was his greatest legacy. Not the awards, not the box office numbers, but the quiet, compassionate moments that revealed his true character. After Robin's passing, Sally found it difficult to watch Mrs. Doubtfire again. Not because it wasn't a joyful memory, but because the laughter echoed differently now. She could hear his improvisations, his silly voices, his playful energy, and she would smile, but also ache. The film that had once been a comedy became, for her, a bittersweet reminder of what the world had lost. As years went by, Robin's influence only grew. Younger actors cited him as an inspiration, comedians studied his timing, and audiences continued to rediscover his brilliance. For Sally, his legacy wasn't just artistic, it was personal. She believed that Robin taught everyone, herself included, that kindness and humor could coexist, that you could touch hearts not only through laughter, but through compassion. When asked about Robin in interviews, Sally often paused, her voice softening as memories flooded back. She didn't talk about celebrity gossip or behind-the-scenes drama. Instead, she shared the story of that one day, the day he stood by her when her father died. To her, that story said it all. It was the essence of Robin Williams, the man who cared when it mattered most. For the world, Robin Williams will always be the comedian, the actor, the legend. But for Sally Field, he will always be something more. The friend who noticed when she was in pain, the man who used his influence not for himself, but for others. In her heart, Robin lives not as a star, but as a deeply human soul who gave everything he had to make others feel seen, loved, and never alone. That, she believes, is the legacy worth remembering. Robin often spoke quietly about the weight of being everyone's source of happiness. Wherever he went, people expected jokes, laughter, and energy. It was as if the world demanded that he never stop performing. Sally, who had seen him in quiet moments, knew this was unfair. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes when the cameras stopped rolling. He was brilliant, yes, but he was also human, and humans cannot always be on. Behind closed doors, Robin wrestled with battles the public never truly understood. Depression shadowed him, even in the brightest moments of his career. Sally once reflected that his pain was not weakness. It was part of the depth that made him so uniquely compassionate. He could empathize with others because he knew what it meant to hurt, and that in many ways was the gift and the curse of his genius. Though they weren't inseparable in Hollywood's glamorous sense, Sally cherished the comfort she felt, knowing Robin existed in her world. Whenever they reconnected, it was like no time had passed. He could make her laugh within seconds, and she could remind him simply by listening that he was valued beyond the spotlight. That quiet reassurance was something both of them treasured. August 11, 2014, became a day of mourning across the globe. News of Robin Williams' death stunned fans, friends, and family. Tributes poured in from every corner of the entertainment industry. For Sally, the grief was deeply personal. She didn't just lose a fellow actor. She lost the man who once lifted her when she couldn't stand on her own. The world cried for a legend. Sally cried for her friend. In Hollywood, celebrities come and go, but Robin's passing shook the industry in a way few others had. Actors, comedians, directors, everyone had a story about him. Each story carried the same message. Robin cared. He noticed. He gave more of himself than most could. Sally, reading these tributes, felt both sorrow and gratitude. Sorrow for the loss, gratitude that so many others had experienced the same warmth she once did. In the months after his passing, Sally spoke with raw honesty about what Robin meant to her. She didn't sugarcoat his struggles or pretend he was perfect. Instead, she painted him as he was, brilliant, complicated, kind, and flawed. To her, that honesty was the greatest tribute she could give, because Robin's humanity was what made him unforgettable. Even in grief, Sally found comfort in the sound of his laughter. She would remember how he could take the simplest line of dialogue and turn it into something magical. She would remember how his energy filled a room, how he made strangers feel like friends. That laughter, she realized, would never die. It lived on in every performance, in every fan who pressed play on one of his films. Sally often emphasized that Robin's true legacy wasn't just his films. It was the way he made people feel. He showed the world that kindness mattered, that comedy could be healing, and that empathy could change lives. By sharing her story of him, Sally hoped to remind others that even the smallest acts of compassion can leave an eternal mark. There were days when Sally didn't want to watch his films or read the tributes. Some days she simply wanted silence, time, to remember him not as a star, but as a man. She thought of the gentle look in his eyes,